It's okay. Pretty good. Your age?
Is it time?
Would you like an introduction, or
No,
do you
how
want to
do
just get going?
you can introduce? Do you? How do the people that are supposed to link in?
So I got them LinkedIn on StreamYard on my
Okay.
computer.
And you let them in?
Well, they click on the links.
Okay.
So if you actually,
If people say-
let me go to my thing, put my headphones on, and then can you say like testing, and I'll see if I hear you.
Kleenex. Phone. I hope my phone doesn't. Oh, loca.
You want me to record?
It's recording.
Yes. Yes. Okay, volume sounds good. If you're ready, I'll go ahead and introduce you.
Okay.
Hi, good morning. Welcome. Thank you for coming.
Good morning.
Morning. I'm Joy Oria, I'm the Genealogy and Local History Librarian. I'm very happy to have Lynda and Tom here today to talk about their decades of research. So thank you for coming. We are streaming this live on Facebook and YouTube as well. So welcome, everyone. Lynda.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. I was born Lynda Sena, and I changed my name to Hernan Martin Serrano. I will have a question and answer after my presentation, so please hold your questions. I had said to myself while I was doing this, how do I condense 427 years of New Mexico history into 1 hour? I can only say that it's impossible, but I can share a little bit of information. I've researched my family for about 30 years, and I'm blessed to have a father who introduced me to his history of New Mexico. The Martin Serranos lived in various places in New Mexico. Oñate is where they first started when they came with the Oñate expedition in 1598. I'm not going to go through every single area because it's too much. It would take up too much time. But there's like 14 places so far, and I've been to every single location. I have discovered that my grandfathers had land in Mora and in San Miguel, 160 acres in one area and 120 in another, but I'm not having any luck finding out what happened to that land. Now, this is Juan Oñate on his horse in Texas, and he's the man that a lot of people from Nueva Galicia, Zacatecas area, and up to Mexico City came to New Mexico. This map, I got this map at a conference that I attended in Española, New Mexico, and this is a replica of Asensio de Archuleta and his wife, and then a picture of Hernan Martin Serrano, who is my progenitor, and his wife, Juana Rodriguez. Now, Hernan Martin Serrano, he's the second. His father's name was Hernan the first. And his wife, we don't know what happened to her. We don't know if she died along the road to New Mexico or if she even arrived in New Mexico. But this tells basically our history from the beginning. It's a great map to have. I love it. I had it. I have to stand here. Oh, I'm so sorry. So it looks like the people that are on YouTube aren't going to hear me if I move around. And unfortunately, I'm a hyper person and I move around, but I'll try to stay right here in place. So again, like I said, the progenitor is Hernan Martin Serrano, but he's also the progenitor of my Sena family. And my Sena family, it seems that they changed their name in the 1800s. We don't know why exactly. Maybe there was a family feud. I have no idea. But after much research and hitting a dead end, I asked my brother Victor if he would take the big Y DNA test. And we found out that we were not originally Senas, but we were Martin Serranos. And that happened to many families. And Tom Martinez will be discussing that later. And I do want to point out to the families that are here who are maybe from the Senas, the Y DNA test that was taken proves that we are not from Bernardino de Sena y Valle, who was an orphan who came from Mexico City. but from Hernan Martin Serrano II. I've listed in my presentation the different names of my family members. And as I go through that, I'll show you the names. But anyway, my brother Victor did his Y-DNA, and his haplogroup is RFTA 12721. That's an important number if you do your Y-DNA, because that traces your ancestry on the male side of the family. So again, my progenitor is Hernan Martin Serrano I. That's of my Sena family. So Hernan Martin Serrano I, he was born about 1530. We don't know exactly where he was born, but we do know that the family came from Spain. Where in Spain, we don't know that. We only know it's in Spain based on DNA. But he did reside in Zacatecas, Nueva Galicia, which is now Mexico. He is the father of Hernan Martin Serrano II. Hernan Martin Serrano did not give a name for his mother, so we don't know who the mother is of Hernan Martin Serrano. This is a picture of Zacatecas, Mexico. It's the present day picture of Zacatecas, but it was a mining town, and a lot of the people in my family and the families that came to New Mexico were from Zacatecas, Mexico City, various areas in Mexico. But we have to remember, it wasn't Mexico. It was under the rule of Spain. I want to travel there someday. So Hernan Martin Serrano II was married to Juana Rodriguez. He was born about 1556 to 1558. He died after 1626 in New Mexico. Hernan, along with some of his family members, were on the Juan Oñate expedition to New Mexico. He's listed on the 1600 El Paso del Norte muster roll. We do, like I said earlier, we do not know if Juana Rodriguez made it to New Mexico or if she died along the path. Hernan was then with a woman named Doña Inés, who was a Tano Indian. So she had a son named Hernan Martin Serrano III, and he had another son, Luis Martin Serrano I. We don't know who his mother is. So two sons. The first son, again, we don't know who the mother is. They're assuming that it's Doña Inés, but we don't have documentation to prove that. And again, this is just a replica. I can't move. I can't. This is a replica of the picture that's on this map. And I was so thrilled when I took this class in Espanol. I think, John, you were on that trip. And when I saw my great-great-grandfather's name on there, I was like so elated. I thought, wow. And he was a soldier. And my family, we are continuing to have military people in our lives. So it's amazing that that just stays in a family. I guess it's in your DNA. Hernan Martin Serrano I then had a son named Hernan Martin Serrano II. Hernan Martin Serrano is a sergeant in the military. And this is a copy of his showing that he's in the military. And then this is a copy of his signature. So for me, I think it's amazing to be able to get a signature from the 1600s. I don't know how many people could really say, I have a copy of my grandfather's signature. So for those of you who do genealogy, I think it's so important to try to have signatures of your families or notes or letters or anything like that to show how their handwriting and what it looked like. I think that's, to me, that's just an amazing thing for me. I go, oh my gosh, that's my grandfather's signature. Oh, I do want to read this. Hernan came to New Mexico with complete arms for his person and horse. He is bringing his wife and family. There's no indication from the records of the period as to identify those individuals who constituted Hernan's family. It just says his wife. Hernan Martin Serrano II had a son named Luis Martin Serrano I, and his wife was Catalina de Salazar. As you can see, Luis Martin Serrano is a capitan in the military. The unfortunate part about doing genealogy is that we don't always have a lot of history about the families, what they looked like, what they did. But he was a soldier, and it was possible that he was born in New Mexico. He did die in Santa Cruz de la Cañada, New Mexico, which is over by Chimayo and close to Española, those areas of northern New Mexico. Luis Martin Serrano the first and his wife Catalina had 4 children. Capitan Luis Martin Serrano the second, and then I'm only going to talk about him because I don't want to go through all the names. I have not been able to research each and every family member. It takes too much time, and I frankly I don't have it, but I do have names of his siblings. Now there is some research about a son that's listed named Domingo Martin Serrano. Researchers have discovered through DNA that Domingo was not the son of Luis Martin Serrano the first. He was a relative, but not a son. And I do want to mention that Jose Antonio Escobal, who's helped me quite a bit, also has updated information about Domingo. So if anybody out there has been doing any research about Domingo, he is related, of course, to the Martin Serranos, but he is not a son. So Luis Martin Serrano the first then had his son, Luis Martin Serrano the second. So as you can see, they kept carrying the same names over and over, which can be very confusing when you do genealogy research. His wife was Antonia de Miranda. He's my 4th great-grandfather. So Luis was born between 1622 and 1633. I don't have an exact record. In Santa Cruz de la Cañada, New Mexico. He passed away in 1707. Luis and Antonia were married in 1651 in Santa Cruz de la Cañada, and he and his wife had the following children. Luis Martin Serrano III, they loved their names. Look at all the names, 1, 2, 3, and then Juan Antonia Maria Rosa, and then my 5th great-grandfather, soldier, I'm not saying it right in Spanish, Hernando Martin Serrano, Cristobal, Maria Antonia, Francisco, Sebastiana, and Catalina. This is a picture that I took when I traveled to Santa Cruz de la Cañada. It's right in front of the church there in Santa Cruz. So many of my Martin Serrano families lived in that area from 1692 to 1797. It's a beautiful area if you ever get to travel there. Then Luis had a son. His name was Hernan Martin Serrano and Josefa de la Ascensión. There's a lot of confusion about this Hernando. Many people, many of this family named their children after Hernando. But this Hernando, it's a different era. So again, when you do research, make sure you look at the dates because the dates can be very confusing and people can lead you down the wrong path. And that's not done intentionally. I don't know a single person who does genealogy that wants to make mistakes. We all try to do the best that we can. And yes, mistakes are made. And I might have some mistakes. All I ask is that you ask me kindly and say, hey, I think you have a mistake in the time frame or the era. I'm happy to check. But a lot of research was done on this man, and that's how I found my connection. So anyway, Hernan Martin Serrano was married to Josefa de la Ascensión, and they lived in the Chimayo area. Hernando was born about 1661. He was married to his second wife, Josefa de la Ascensión, on August 25th, 1690, in San Lorenzo, New Mexico. So I just want to put a plug in here. The Spaniards were in New Mexico from 1598 until 1680. And in 1680, there was a revolt, the Pueblo Indian Revolt, or the San Lorenzo Massacre. And the Spaniards were run out of New Mexico from 1680 to 1692 when they came back. So Hernando and Josefa had the following children: Andres Martin Serrano, Mateo, who's our great-grandfather, Maria, Paula, Diego, and another Maria. This is where Chimayo is. I don't know if anybody has been to the Santuario in Chimayo, but it's right close to Santa Cruz de la Cañada. It's beautiful. Now remember, this is present day Chimayo. This isn't what Chimayo probably looked like in the late 1600s to 1700s. If you ever get a chance to go there, it's just beautiful. So Mateo Martin Serrano is my great-grandfather through Hernando and Josefa de la Ascensión. Mateo Martin Serrano married Maria Antonia Maese de Benavides. I also want to point out to a lot of the women, men always seem to get like all of the credit. But if you look at all of the different names that we have in our family and you look at the last names, these Martin Serranos married into so many different families. So we are so interconnected. It's just unbelievable. And I find it extremely exciting. So on November 28th, 1733, Mateo Martin from Chimayo married Antonia Maese de Benavides. And the witness was Juan Martin and Feliciana de Monroe. And if you notice how Monroe's spelled, it's Monroi. I thought that was interesting as well. Mateo was buried October 10th, 1767 at St. Francis Parish Military Chapel of Our Lady of Light in Santa Fe, New Mexico. He was around 57 years old. His family is enumerated in the 1750 Santa Fe census. So the Martin Serranos, they were a very important family at that time frame, being soldiers, being part of the Juan Oñate expedition. But my family, the Martin Serranos, they left Chimayo and they went down to Santa Fe. So a lot of the Martin Serranos, and I know Tom Martinez is here, I'm going to point him out because he's my primo, but their family stayed in the Santa Cruz de la Cañada area, Chimayo, Española, and those people went up and over into Colorado. My family went down to Santa Fe, and eventually we made our way to Colorado. So that was the big difference. And I think there was a feud. That's what I think. And I'm going to tell you why I think that really quick. So Josefa de la Ascensión, who was married to Hernando, had land in Chimayo, and she was a very poor widow. I wrote 2 articles about her. And there were 2 cases about Josefa. Give me 1 minute. And those cases are in this book. So for the women in here, I think it's important, again, we have to recognize the women who've really done such an incredible job of being involved with their families. But she went to court 2 times, and she won both of her court cases. And one of the court cases was her nephew got into a fight with her son, Mateo, and hit him in the eye. So I wrote that article in one of our journals. And the other one was about her selling her land in Chimayo. So she left Chimayo, a very poor widow, and she was having a feud with one of her brother-in-laws. And I always thought, geez, why couldn't they have taken care of her? That was her sister-in-law, but they didn't. And she left and went to Santa Fe. But if you want, I have 2 journal articles written. You can read about that. So Bernardino, their son was Bernardino de Sena Martin. So you can see the Sena's middle name is in there. It was supposed to be after Saint Siena, but somehow they changed it to Sena. And there's a lot of confusion about that. But Bernardino was born around 1737 in Santa Fe. I think that the Martin Serranos were going back and forth between Santa Fe and Chimayo because my grandmother, Josefa, sold her land and moved to Santa Fe. He married Maria Apolonia Garcia, and that was his first wife. He passed away August 22nd, 1797 in Santa Fe. This is a marriage record that I found for Bernardino, which is important. Again, it's important to have original documents, not abstractions, because you have to have an original document to prove who your family is. So this is a marriage of Bernardino and Apolonia. And in this record, he goes by Bernardino Martin, and she goes as Polonia instead of Apolonia. He was very confusing for our family and for me and for my research. And this is a chart that Jose Antonio Escobar did for me. or not for me, but for this research that we've been involved in. And he talks about the confusion of the Bernardino de Sena. It was very confusing because sometimes he'd go by Bernardino de Sena Maese because his mother was a Maese. And sometimes he'd go by Bernardo Martin. Sometimes he'd go by Bernardo Sena Martin. He was so confusing. I don't know if he knew his name, but that's just how it was. Now, these are just two pictures of Santa Fe. This is the Catholic Church in, the cathedral in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and it's beautiful. And then this is a statue of the original, a monument honoring the soldiers from the original colonial period. And it's right to the left of the cathedral. It's beautiful. And it just reminds us again about the importance of the Spaniards coming to New Mexico, and they were being honored. But I also want to point out, we cannot forget our native mothers because we also are native Indian. I did my Y-DNA. I just did a check on it. And I was so surprised. I'm 42% Spanish and 42% native Indian. 42%, that's half. And most of my Indian comes from Mexico, from the Zacatecas area, and that's where my family was. So I'm so excited. I always knew we had Indian blood. Dad and Mom always told us we had Indian blood. My dad would call my mother mi India. So it wasn't anything we were ever ashamed of. So Bernardino had a son named Juan Rafael Martin, and he married Juana Manuela Sandoval. Again, notice the last name, Sandoval. Look at all the mixes of names we have with our mothers. Juan Rafael Martin Sena, a.k.a. Rafael Sena. Again, they're going back and forth. They don't really know what name to use. And Juana had 7 children. Our grandfather was Jose Manuel de Jesus Sena. He was born April 14th, 1797. And they had the following children: Maria Gertrudis, Jose Maria, Maria Guadalupe, Jose Rafael, Jose Miguel, and Maria Lorenza. Jose Manuel de Jesus Sena. Now you can see that the Sena last name is spelled with a C. So once again, was it because of the census records, people writing their names down incorrectly? I don't know, but I have to use the C because the baptismal record says C. So again, when you're doing your genealogy and you're doing your research, you got to look at various ways that people spelled their name. And Maria Guadalupe Romero. They were again married in Santa Fe, New Mexico. So you can see that this family stayed in the Santa Fe, New Mexico area. On February 9th, 1820, Manuel Martin and Guadalupe were married, and their witness was Juan Pino and Diego Padilla from this parish. So Jose Manuel de Jesus and his wife Maria, they had 4 children. Jose Francisco, who's our grandfather, and he's my great-great-grandfather, and Rafael, Bernardo, or Bernard, and then Jose Guadalupe. Maria passed away, and then he married a second time to Maria Antonia Sanchez on August 13th, 1839 in New Mexico. I don't have an exact location, but now that's 1839. Jose Francisco Martin Sena married Maria Ignacia Padilla. Jose and Maria were married September 8th, 1844. She was only 14 years old. However, they left San Miguel de Vado and they moved, and I don't know, let me see if I have an exact record. Oh, they were married in San Miguel de Vado. So then they left Santa Fe and went to San Miguel de Vado. And that's south of Las Vegas in the Villanueva area. Eventually, they moved to Chaparrito, New Mexico, and raised their family there. Maria passed away, and he married a second wife, Maria Luisa Duran. Jose was born October 7th, 1823, in La Cienega, Santa Fe, New Mexico. His parents were Jose Manuel de Jesus Sena and Maria Guadalupe. He passed away September 1917 in Chaparrito. New Mexico. Maria Ignacia was born May 7th, 1830 in San Miguel de Vado. She passed away before 1872 in New Mexico. Her parents were Jose Longinio Padilla and Maria Teresa Romero. There is a lot of work out there about Jose Longinio Padilla. There's a lot of books written about this man who happens to be my grandfather as well. So you might look for that. But I thought, well, I wonder if Longinio, I've seen it, Longinio Padilla. I don't know if it's a middle name or if it's his, it sounds French, but I don't know. In 1860 United States Federal Census of San Miguel de Vado, Francisco, Sena, Ignacio, and Ignacia indicate that these children were living in at home in San Miguel. Antonio, Isabel, Concepcion, Vidal, and Juan Sena. In the 1870 census in the township of San Miguel de Vado, it's indicated that Jose Francisco and Ignacia had 11 children. 11 children. That's pretty amazing. But the Senas that are from Pueblo, Diane Sena, James Sena, Joe Sena, Jesse Sena, those are all my cousins. And they come from Jose Francisco Martin Sena's other son. We come from his son, Juan, and they come from a different son. So, and we grew up with them. We were raised with them. My mom and dad went dancing with their mom and dad. I mean, we knew our family. But also, Jose Francisco married a second time because his first wife, Maria, had passed away. And he married Maria Luisa Duran. And he had children with Maria Luisa Duran, Romanita, Frank, Guadalupe, and Gregorio. I don't know how to say it in Spanish. John, help me. Gregorio, thank you. And somebody called me a russet potato one time from New Mexico. And I said, I never heard that word. What does that mean? So, so I'm brown on the outside and white on the inside. It's my European side. It's my native is the brown. But anyway, we were born, this family, we also grew up with the family of Francisco's wife, Maria Luisa Duran. They had the 4 children. It's the Tucker family and the Smith family. We went to school with the Tuckers and we went to school with the Smiths. So isn't it amazing that we all follow each other? It's like the families are just following each other from New Mexico into Colorado. It's great. And I'm very good friends with my cousin Joan Smith. She couldn't make it here today. My cousin Ida Tucker, we stay in touch. And my dad, he was the one that made sure that we knew who our family was. So I love that about my father. And this is a picture of, and it's a historical sign. It's right in front of the San Miguel de Vado Catholic Church. And like I said, I've been to every single location that I listed of those 14 places. But my sister Yolanda is with me. And we had a great trip traveling along to the different areas. But this is where my families were married and baptized, and, you know, they had their funerals. It's a beautiful area. It's, you know, everything in New Mexico to me is beautiful. But San Miguel is awesome because when I go there, I feel like, you know, my blood is there. Okay, so Francisco and Maria Ignacia had a son named Juan Sena. Juan Sena married Maria Concepcion Garcia. And they lived in, Juan and Maria were married October 26, 1879 in Chaparrito. They lived and raised their family in Chaparrito for about 50 years, 50. That's a long time, before moving to New Mexico. They had 8 children, Herculano, the first Herculano, Benedito, Hermesillo, Eulalia, Sinforosa, Delfinio, Jose Concesión, Maria Ignacia, and then my grandfather, Jose Herculano. Maria Concepcion was born December 3rd, 1859, and baptized on December 8th, 1859. Her father was Rafael Garcia, and her mother was Maria Josefa Madril. It doesn't say Madrid, it says Madril, but it was probably Madrid, in La Plaza de los Valles in San Isidro, New Mexico. This family lived in Chaparrito for 50 years. That's a long time. They were sheep herders. And I have all of the records to show that my grandmother was born there and my grandfather, and they got married. Plus, my grandfather's Jose Francisco Martin Sena and my grandmother's father were soldiers in the Civil War. So I've just written an article about my grandmother, Maria Concepcion Garcia, for our journal, the GSHA journal, the Herencia. And it's very interesting. She was a strong woman because when they left Chaparito, they then went to, before I start, this is the landscape of Chaparito. I have a ton of pictures about Chaparito, but now that land is owned by a rancher. You can't get into the cemetery. You can't get into that area. But boy, I sure would love to visit. At one time, the owner would let people go in, but now, I mean, he's just not. And there's probably a reason. Probably a lot of people want to visit Chaparito. Okay, so then my grandmother and my grandfather, Juan Sena, they leave Chaparito and they moved to a town called, a little ranch area called Pintada, La Pintada. So at the top of this picture is my grandfather. He's my great-grandfather, Juan Sena. He was very young. I see this picture. I thought, look how young he was. And then that's my other great-grandfather, Patrocinio Fajardo. And that's the only picture I have of my grandfather. My grandfather passed away at the age of 50. So shortly after leaving Chaparito and living there 50 years and moving to the land in Pintada, he passed away. And my grandmother is the one who had to hold the family together. They had a son named Jose Herculano Sena, and my grandfather Herculano married Flora Fajardo. My grandfather was born January 16th, 1901 in Chaparito, San Miguel County, and it's outside of Santa Rosa. If you know anything about that part of the country, it's outside of Santa Rosa, New Mexico. My grandfather died also very young in Barstow, California on June 24th, 1960. My grandmother, Flora, was born October 9th, 1905 in Santa Rosa, New Mexico, and she passed away October 4th, 2003 in Barstow, California. So I'm very proud of my grandmother because I'm named after her. So my name is Lynda Flora Martin Serrano. Herculano married Flora November 28th, 1924 in San Ignacio, New Mexico. They lived in Pintada and raised their children there. My grandparents had my father, Rolando, Horacio, Ida, Wilton, and Donilia. They moved their family from Pintada, New Mexico to Santa Rosa around 1941. And then they moved the family from Santa Rosa, New Mexico to various locations in Colorado, but then they finally settled in La Junta, Colorado. My grandfather, Herculano, moved from La Junta, Colorado to Barstow to find work. So it's kind of interesting as you go through your genealogy and you see people, they're following their family, they're looking for work, and then they move. I mean, 14 places. It's a lot of moving, but you know, I'm the person in the family who's moved a lot as well. So this is a picture of my grandfather, Jose Herculano, and my grandmother, Flora Fajardo. And this was taken in La Junta, Colorado. So from left to the right is my father, Rolando, and his trademark hat. So if anybody knows, my father always wore a hat. My grandmother, Flora, my grandfather, Herculano, my aunt, Ida. In the back of my aunt, Ida, is my uncle, Horacio. Standing in the front of my uncle, Horacio, is my aunt, Donilia. And behind her is my uncle, Wilton. And we're a very, very close family. My parents made it known that we had to be a family, take care of each other, and always be there for each other. Now, this is a picture of my grandfather, Herculano, and his mother, Concepcion, and his wife, Flora. And I really believe that in this picture, I can see the native Indian in my grandmother. So I love this picture. I treasure this picture. And they were sheep herders. So again, in Pintada, in Chaparito, they leave Chaparito, they were sheep herders. If you look at census records, it shows that my grandmother, Maria Concepcion, her title was stock raiser. They had like 1,000 acres in Pintada, and they left because of the drought. I guess there was a drought in New Mexico, and they had to leave and look for other places to live, and they ended up in La Junta. So my parents, Rolando Sena and Maria de Lovina Madrid. My father was born March 23rd, 1926 in Bernalillo, New Mexico. He married my mother, Maria de la Vina Madrid, on August 20th, 1945 in Raton, New Mexico. My father was going off to the military. Again, military. So my mom married my father, and then my mom and dad eventually got married in the Catholic Church in La Junta when he came back. But they raised 8 children in La Junta. We're all born there. I have my 8 brothers and sisters. So my brother Victor is in the front row. Thank you, brother, for coming. He's the eldest of our family. Now, he's the patriarch of my family. He loves that title. My brother Martin, and we call him Martin, but his original name was Paul Martin. I hope you're watching, brother. My second oldest brother. He's in Alamogordo, New Mexico. My sister, Barbara Diana, she's up front as well. Thank you, sister, for coming. My brother Samuel, he couldn't make it, but I know he's here with me in my heart. My sister Yolanda, she's twin number 1. She's up in the front row. Thank you, my sister Yolanda. My funny and crazy sister, Corrine, twin number 2. She's here. So I feel so blessed to have my family here supporting me. And then, of course, the baby of the family, and I hope she's watching because we are being live, is Eileen, and she's in Arizona. So I'm blessed to have the family that I have. We moved to Pueblo in the early 1960s, and basically we consider Pueblo our home, although we've moved from La Junta to Boone to Avondale and then to Pueblo. Our mother passed away on June 23rd, 1998. My father passed away on November 10th, 2006. I miss them dearly. We all miss them. My cousins, the Reyeses, are here from my mom's side of the family. Our mothers were instrumental in keeping our families connected. We were together all the time. So thank you, my cousins, for coming. Now, this is really one of my favorite pictures of all time. It's of my parents and their children and some of the spouses, but this was taken in December 1971 in our home in Pueblo. And we're all very young. And this picture I remember so well because I went to work for the FBI in Washington, D.C. in May of 1971. I came home for my first visit in December for Christmas, and my mom and dad wanted us to have a family picture. So this is just a treasure for me. Then my brother Victor, who's the patriarch of our family. Now my father's gone, and his wife Betty. Betty's in the front row sitting next to my brother. We love our sister, and we love you, Joanne. She's in Alamogordo. I know they're watching. So Victor and his first wife, Louise, had 2 daughters, Pearl Sena and Karen Sena. Victor was married a second time to Bernice Lopez, and he had 2 children, Priscilla Sena and Victor Sena Jr. So, we just keep on going. We have more people to carry the legacy of the Sena/Martin Serrano family. This is a picture of Victor and his 4 children. Left to right, Victor Jr., Priscilla in the back, their dad, Victor, Pearl, his eldest daughter. She was our first granddaughter, our first grandchild, and boy, we spoiled her. And then we had Karen, so he had 4 children. He's a very proud father, and he loves his children, like we all do. Then I have my nephew, Victor Sena Jr., and his wife, Crystal, and their children. Victor Sena Jr. is the son of my brother, Victor, as I mentioned. He's really was the only one that we would be carrying our name. And now he's married to Crystal, and they have 2 children, Emery Rose and Jace Sena. So this is a picture of Victor Sena Jr. and his wife, Crystal, and their children. And little Jace, little boy on it's my left. He's going to be the next one to carry on the Martin Serrano Sena name. And in conclusion, I have to say, I'm saying that tracing my family and discovering we now have 16 generations of Martin Serranos and Senas is due to my father asking me to research our family history. Little did I know that I would soon discover that I had a last name change, and it surprised my family, and it surprised me. but I have to say I'm very, very proud to carry the Martin Serrano last name. It's my surname, and I wanted to carry that name for my family. It's going to be on my headstone when I pass away. And I will say it was a shock to my family. It is, because Daddy would always say, "You're a Sena, be tough, you're strong." And he made all of us very strong. And he would say, "Oh, you want to be a leader or a follower?" And the problem is he's made 8 children who are all leaders. We're not very good followers. When we're together, who's going to be the chief? So it does happen, but that's the way it is. And I don't mind. It's great. I'm just going to show a few more pictures of my family. So these are my Sena siblings, my brothers and sisters with their spouses. We had a family reunion, and it was great. It was like 20 years after our mom had passed away. And then these are some, not all, of my Sena siblings with their children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. So as you can see, this family continues to grow and grow and grow, and we're still growing. Now, this is a picture of my daddy, Rolando, with his 3 sons, Victor, Martin, and Samuel. And my dad was very proud of his sons. He was proud of his daughters, but this presentation is about the men. My dad was very, I'm doing the presentation. Well, if I said our dad, and they tell me that all the time. But do you know, a lot of people from New Mexico, we always say, "mi daddy, mi mama." It's just like I don't know why, but we do that. And you're right, sister. She's the big sister. She's the matriarch. And here's a picture of my father and my mother. And it warms my heart. You know, my daddy, he worked 2 jobs his whole life to provide for my mom and his children. And he worked at the Pueblo Army Depot for 30 years. He retired, but while he was working there as a guard, he also sold life insurance. And he tried to help so many people, telling them the importance of having life insurance. And back then it was to bury you, because getting buried is expensive. So when I got a job, my sister Yolanda got a job, we all got jobs. He's like, "You have to buy life insurance, because if you die, I can't afford to bury you." And you know what? He was right. We do need life insurance, but I'm not here to sell life insurance. But my mother was the best. I mean, my mother lived for her children. So they both taught us the importance of loving each other, forgiving each other, and getting over being upset with each other. Get mad, get glad, because all you have is each other. And I think that's important. And I think that's instrumental in telling that to our future families and future generations. Now, this chart is what I found so interesting when I discovered that my mother and father are actually related. So I don't want to go through the whole chart. It's going to be there. It's going to be on YouTube. It'll be live if you want to go back and look at it. But Mateo, and by the way, I have a godson, and I named his baptismal name is Mateo. And I was so proud of that, because it means a gift from God. So Mateo, to me, was a gift from God. He had several children, but the Bernardino de Sena Martin, we come from him on daddy's side. And he had a son named Joaquin. Joaquin was a twin. So it was Joaquin 1 and Joaquin 2, but we come from Joaquin. I don't know which twin was born before the other, but Joaquin Martin was married to Apollonia Rodriguez. And then they had a daughter named Maria de la Concepcion Martin. Now, you already know my line. I've gone over it. But Bernardino and Joaquin were brothers. Mama, our mom, and this affects my Reyes cousins, come from Joaquin Martin, and daddy, we come from Bernardino. So if you are related to me, like the Reyeses are, their mother is a Madrid Ocanes, but their grandmother was Rebecca Madrid. So all of those Madrids are from this progenitor, Hernan Martin Serrano. Isn't that amazing? These are just the family crests. So in conclusion, I want to just say my email is up on top, and my email is donaflora53@gmail.com. So in English, it's Donna Flora, D as in dog, O as in orange, N as in Nancy, A as in apple, Flora, F as in Flora, L as in Linda, O is in orange, R is in Robert, A is in apple, 53@gmail.com. If you want to send me questions there, feel free to do so. I do want to say thank you to Joy and Aaron for helping me with my displays here at the Rollins Library and for allowing me to do this presentation. So I'll take any questions if anybody has any questions for me.
Who's the favorite?
I am. Yes, Kathy.
Who are your parents' common ancestor? Is it Hernan Martin Serrano? The common ancestor?
Luis Martin Serrano the first, and then down to Luis's son, Luis the second, and then Luis the second has Hernando, and then Hernando and his wife Josefa have Mateo. And then Mateo has two sons. He has several children. I'm just talking about these two sons. Bernardino is my dad's side. My mother is from Joaquin, but Joaquin and his wife had a daughter named Maria Concepcion. And you know, women don't carry the names. So they don't carry the last name, they carry their husband's name. So it came all the way down to my grandmother and my mother. And my mother, Bella, was sister to Florence Reyes. So that's how I'm related to the Reyeses.
Okay, so the answer is the common ancestor is Luis.
Yes, the first. It's really Mateo, the son.
Mateo, okay.
Yeah. And I have that chart. It's also posted in one of the journals that I wrote for Josefa. Josefa de la Asociación went through a lot when her husband passed away. It breaks my heart how she was treated. So they left the Chimayo area and went to Santa Fe. The family that stayed there, the brothers of Hernando, were not kind to her. So that's why they left. Go ahead.
So I'm so confused about the Hernandez. Is that one from Juan Martin or that's from Luis?
No, from Luis. There's now Hernan Martin Serrano the second. He had two sons, Luis Martin Serrano the first and Hernando Martin Serrano the third. I call him the third. I don't have a lot of information about Hernan Martin Serrano the third, but I believe that he had a son named Juan Martin. Okay. And then Juan Martin again had a son named Hernando.
And that one was not married to.
No. Well, here's the problem. And it took me years to figure that out. And I have a friend who helped me with a record from the state archives. Okay, so back to your question. Hernando III had a son named Juan. And I don't have all these names memorized. It's difficult to memorize it. But then he and his wife had a son named Hernando. Hernando married, and this is where the confusion is, a woman named Josefa Gonzalez. My grandmother, years down, was Josefa de la Asociación, and people were putting Gonzalez next to her name. Okay? It was a different time period. And my cousin, I have a primo from Albuquerque, and he's related to me through my mother, the Lobato side. He is the one that said, you stick to your guns. They're two different people, two different eras, and they were. So it's not, this Hernando who belongs to me married Josefa de la Asociación. This Hernando in this time frame married Josefa Gonzalez.
But she was not Josefa de la Asociación.
She is not Josefa de la Asociación.
From Bernardino Sena and Tomasa.
Yes, yes.
And I'm trying to figure out which Hernando. It goes to Hernando after
Okay.
that, and then where
Tomasa comes from
Luis.
Tomasa comes from Hernando, Juan, and then the other Hernando.
Tomasa Martin Gonzalez.
Yes.
Oh,
She's an aunt. She's not. There was some confusion about that. Trust me.
Esquivel mentioned that she had a Montoya grandmother that Bernardo Sena inherited some property from his Montoya in-law grandmother.
Yes.
Who's that Montoya grandmother? That's
Can you please tell me your name?
Jason Maestas.
Jason.
Yeah.
Okay, Jason, I'm not well versed in that side of the family, unfortunately. Huh?
Maybe I'll email you.
Yes, please email, because I can tell you that I worked diligently with Jose Esquivel to get this straightened out. And he listened to me. I couldn't get other people to listen to me, but thank God for my cousin Anja who said, you just stick to your guns because it's not the right time frame. Yeah. And then I got a record from a friend that showed my Hernando. And then the two, this book talks about my grandmother, Josefa, and this straightened it out because Josefa de la Ascensión was married to Hernando.
And is that the grandmother of Tomasa and Bernardo?
No, not at all.
Okay.
No, it's a different Josefa. But I will help you. And I do want to make a plug for Jose Antonio Esquivel. He is the expert in the Martin Serrano family, okay? He knows, and he knows a lot. He has documents after documents, but they hadn't seen the document that I had. And it was in Spanish. It was great. I was thrilled. So there is a difference. Marie?
Would you tell us all the name of that book?
Oh, sure. This is called The Spanish Colonial Women and the Law. This book is awesome, and it talks a lot about the rights that women had at that time. I mean, my grandmother went to court 2 times, and she won both times. And in this court case is when her son Mateo got in a fight with his first cousin. And it's because his cousin Nicolasa ran his horse through her cornfield. So they had a fight. And by the way, Domingo is in this book, and he breaks up the fight. But he's much older than Mateo and Nicolas. They're like in their 19, 20 years old. So there's a lot of cases in here about women and what they did. And then the other court case is when she was trying to sell her land in Chimayo, and her grandsons, Joaquin I and Joaquin II, were fighting her for that land when their father, Mateo, gave her that land to do with it what she wanted. And they lost. She got the land. So it's like, your grandsons took you to court? I was so angry. But she won that case. Hold on 1 second. Hold on.
You might mention Graham Cruz, which is the majority of us. That's when we made our connection. So we got a hold of these folks.
Okay, who? Oh, I did want to say this. This book here, Origins of New Mexico Families by Fray Angelico Chavez. This book is what got me started. And my brother Martin, he was living in New Mexico at the time, and we thought we were connected to Bernardino de Sena y Valle because our last name was Sena. It was a surprise and a shock, and my family wasn't happy. I mean, to go from being a Sena to now your whole name is changed, and I'm 71 years old. But, I want to carry that name. And then,
Lynda, before you
yes.
go further, can you let the audience know who the author is of those 2 books?
Sure. And I think it's going to be on YouTube, so you'll be able to look at it. And then don't forget, you can email me. But the author is Lynda Teagues, was the editor, and J. Richard Salazar is this transcriber and translator. Now, remember, everybody, these records were in Spanish. So people have taken the time to get these translated into English for people like us who didn't grow up speaking Spanish. Yes, russet potatoes. So see how important it is to really give them credit. I mean, that's a lot of work. It's taken me 30 years to discover this. So can you imagine how long it's taken them to translate Spanish documents to English? And of course, this is the Origins of New Mexico Families, a genealogy of the Spanish colonial period. And Fray Angelico Chavez wrote this book. Now, I could tell you about books and books and books because I have so many books. You should see my office. You should see my wall. It's filled with books. And this is another book, Spanish Colonial Lives. And this was also written by Lynda Teagues and J. Richard Salazar. More documents of court cases. So there's a lot of information out there. It could take forever.
We've got a question from online.
Sure.
She's asking, did Hernan Martin Serrano come with the Juan de Oñate in 1598 from Zacatecas as a sergeant under the command of Juan Ruiz.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Now I want to talk about this book as well. This is the Martin Serranos, a Spanish colonial family of New Mexico. And this was written by Henrietta Martinez Christmas, but she's a Martin Serrano. And her family lived in Chaparito. So she's written this book, and it's a great book too if you want to find out about your family. She comes from a different side of the Martin Serrano family than I do, but we're related. And she wrote a book about Chaparito. And I don't have that book with me. Anything else? Anything online, Joy?
A few comments from relatives, wishing they could have been here, and excellent presentation.
Okay. I do want to say that, and if I'm out of time, let me know, 5 minutes. This is another important book. When my family left Santa Fe, there was the San Miguel de Vado land grant. So that's how they moved and probably why they moved to the San Miguel de Vado area. But these are baptisms of people who were baptized in San Miguel. There's tons and tons and tons of information out there. It takes time and time and time. And it's taken me 30 years of time to do this. So if nobody else has any questions, Joy? Okay. Well, thank you all for coming. I'm really thrilled to have everybody here and my family and friends. I have family in California, Texas, New Mexico, Arizona. It means a lot to me to have my family here, of course. My partner, Brad, in the back. My brother-in-law, Dennis. His family comes from Zacatecas. My primo, Tom Martinez, I grew up with him. John Valdez, we grew up with him in Avondale. I've had a great life. And of course, my Ray's cousins, never forget them. So thank you.
Good job, Teresa.
Oh, don't forget. Joy, you do some time?
Yeah, you guys want to take a couple minutes break?
Great.
All right, you guys ready to take a seat and we'll have Tom get started on his presentation? All right, welcome back. If you haven't already, Tom has these banners here on the side that you can take a look at, his research. And I think we're ready to get started. Please welcome Tom Martinez. Thank you.
Put my cane away. Can everybody hear me okay? No? Back there? Well, I'm sorry. I'm going to try and maybe scream if I can. Use my water. I hope you can hear me. As Joy said, I've got some banners here that I created. They're last year's banners of the Martin Serrano family that has taken their DNA tests. And I put them all together with their family trees and how they relate to each other through their DNA. Like I said, it was last year. That was 38 people, 38 testers. As of today, there are 49 more testers. So that has grown quite a bit just by more people, more men taking tests. Before I get into this, I want to say a little bit about FACC. FACC stands for Fray Analico Chavez Chapter for the GSHA. We are a chapter of GSHA, which is the Genealogical Society of Hispanic America. GSHA actually has 3 chapters. We're just one of them. Another one is in Utah, another one is in California. And we have about 350 members in total. In Pueblo, there's probably about 120 or so. So if you are not a member, you're more than welcome to join us. It's only $25 a year. We have one of the biggest libraries for the area for Colorado and New Mexico families. That's strictly what it's for. It's all genealogical stuff. Just by joining it, you can check out books for a whole month, one at a time, or up to 10 books at a time. Anyway, let's get together. Let's get going over here. Lynda actually showed you some of this already, so I'm not going to go too much more into it. Of course, you all know that Hernan I came from Spain. We don't know very much about him. We don't really know his birth date. It all comes from documents from Hernan and his sons. As a matter of fact, all of these people really don't have any baptismals or marriages that gives us a definite date for their birth dates. So we all rely on documents and the fact they all live together in the same area. Now, of course, Hernan II is Hernan's son. Hernan II had 2 sons, Luis I and Hernan III. Now, I put these numbers, numeral numbers 1, 2, 3, behind their Hernan name. It did come right that way. In the records, it's all Hernan. The reason we put it there is so that we can keep track. We can figure out who was who. Otherwise, it would really be hard. And it was hard trying to figure this out in the original records. Now, Luis I is the person that most of the DNA comes from so far. And he had 5 sons. This was in 2019. In 2025, things have changed. It has adjusted this tree just slightly. And one of the reasons is DNA. When I took my first DNA in 2016, I took the Y37 DNA through Family Tree DNA. They're the only company that can give you a Y DNA. To get the Y DNA, first of all, you have to be a man. A woman cannot take that test. The Y DNA is passed down from father to son, that son to their sons, and so on down the generations. From a man 230,000 years ago, I still have his DNA. It was passed down all these generations down. And I'll explain that a bit more. So that's my haplogroup, RM269. So what the heck is a haplogroup? I'm gonna give you a few words that you probably don't understand. I'm going to try and help you understand them. Now, a haplogroup is all it is a group of genetic people, men usually, but women can also have a haplogroup, but that's a totally different test. But they all share the same ancestor. That's a haplogroup. Now, they split it down to, it's like a tree. This is a simplified tree. It starts at the top with what we call Y Adam. It's not the genealogy, it's not the biblical Adam, but it's really the genetic Adam. It's the very first person that we got DNA from at an archaeological site about 230,000 years ago. So we still have the DNA from him. Now, all these haplogroups are split up whenever there's a mutation in the DNA. So we get a new haplogroup whenever there's a new mutation. And that mutation is passed down the generations. And we call them A, B, C, just like the alphabet. And whenever there's a subgroup behind one, like the letter E down here at the bottom, they give it a letter and a number, like E3B. And that's all those really are. They're just names. But if you can think of them as an actual man, because it started with one man that had that certain mutation in their DNA. For instance, here we have a Y going down to, and I don't think you can see this. Yeah, J, this is J that it goes down to. That's the way the tree works. My R2M69 comes from the R1B, down at the lower right. R1B is much, much older than the M269. The further down you go, the younger it is. Here's another tree from Family Tree DNA. At the upper left is the APR2921. Don't worry about the letters and the numbers. Just know that that's one man, and that's the very first man that we ever got DNA from, 230,000 years ago. And the haplogroups go on down in time towards men that currently live on the earth. The numbers that you see behind each DNA, each haplogroup, is how many men tested. So far, about 89,000 men have that particular haplogroup. There, at the very top over here, is that Y Adam. That's the very same person that's over here at the upper left. 232,000 years ago. Before him, there's A000T. That was 368,000 BCE. The E stands for before the current era. And then before him was Denisovan divergence, A0000. That is actually the very first, oldest DNA sample that we have, 705,000 years ago. That was before Homo sapiens. But the very first Homo sapien is really the Y Adam. My RM269 is right here, highlighted right here. Right now, there's currently about 35,000 people that have tested, and they have that haplogroup. The names of some of them are over here on the lower right, highlighted as Martinez down there. 692 of them have put their names in there out of the 38,000. There's another website out there called SNP Tracker, and it has all these haplogroups also, except that they're called SNPs. Now, why would they be calling them SNPs if they're haplogroups? Well, they're actually one and the same, believe it or not. It all depends on about what context you're talking about. In this case, they're SNPs. This website was created by Rob Spencer, and here's the URL for that website in case you want to get on it, because he has a ton of tools in here for DNA. So I'm going to explain a little bit about what a SNP is. Remember, I told you it's actually a haplogroup also, but a SNP is really just a little part of your Y-DNA. The Y-DNA, as you know, down here at the bottom, is kind of like a helix form. Well, they stretch it out and it looks like a ladder, like this upper picture. And inside that Y-DNA are all these little strands. And there's basically letters in there, A, T, and C, G. That's all there is. A connected to a T, C connected to a G. Now, what happens is, let's say, now the A means it's an adenine, T is a thymine, C is a cytosine, G is a guanine. You don't have to remember any of that. Just remember that they're the letters. Come on, there you go. So let's look at the A and T here on number 11. This is a position on the DNA that they're looking at. So over time, that AAT changes to a CG. That's the mutation that's happening in that SNP. And that happens to a person some time ago, okay? That's all it really is. So all these SNPs are mutations. At the very top is the oldest one, and down at the very bottom is my grandfather's SNP. I got that from him, plus all these that are above him. Let me blow this up a little bit. This is the upper half. The oldest one, of course, is right there. Like I said, 2,200,000 years ago. And down here is the RM269, the very first haplogroup I got with my first test, the Y37. That's one of the low-level tests. Later on, I took a higher-level test. So that was 4,450-year-old SNP. That's as old as that's as early as I could get it. There's not much genealogy there. Here's the bottom half with the RM269 at the top. And down here is the SNP that my grandfather created when he was born, about 146 years ago. So currently I have that SNP, and I'll show you how I got that. One of the things that he has on this website, Rob Spencer, is a migration map showing where Y Adam started in Central Africa 230,000 years ago, and where the R branch went through time into Spain, into current time. At the upper right is where the R branch is, 31,000 years ago. Remember I told you that the RM269 came from the R branch? The R came from the P branch, which is clear over here. Now, as time went over, 13,000 years ago, the RM69 mutation occurred in one person. And that person had sons and became all of the people that currently have the RM269. Now, my current SNP from my grandfather did not come from Spain. Unfortunately, the map does not go into the Americas. He's working on this so that they can go into the Americas and not only give us the haplogroups for the Martin Serranos, but for everybody else that came from Spain and all the Native Americans. Okay, here's the haplogroup that I got when I took my big Y700 in 2020. Instead of RM269, it is PH3335. Remember, that's just a name. That's just a designation for one man that had that mutation and passed it on down to all his sons, grandsons, and so forth. So it came to Hernan Martin Serrano. He has it. When I took the Y700, I only matched 2 people. Over here, there are 38 people that matched to that. That was last year. Now there are 49 people that have taken that test and all matched to that PH3335. Anybody that has PH3335 haplogroup belongs to the Hernan Martin Serrano clan. Here's that same panel on the screen, so for the people on YouTube and on Facebook, of course, they can't see what you guys are looking at over here. So this thing is really divided into 3 parts. Over here at the lower right is from one of the SNPs, the RFT184544. That actually belongs to Domingo Martin Serrano. The one over on the far right, the RFTE11280, belongs to Luis the First. You heard those 2 names from Lynda. The one in the middle, R64638, unfortunately belongs to an unknown man. And that is the branch I come from. So I really don't have a line all the way to Martin Serrano as person to person with a name, but I do have it through DNA. So I'll explain more about that in a little bit. Here's let's see, this is the right side that I showed you, the Luis side. Luis is over here on the upper left. That is his SNP. And he gave it to everybody that you see here. These are all men and their families on all the way down. Off the left is Lynda's tree. All her patrilineal line, all her men going down to her brothers, Victor and Martin. Both of them took the test, and both of them have this SNPs. Now they have more than just that PH3335. Let's see if I can go back here. Nope. I couldn't. Can you go back for me, Joy? So I don't have the controls here.
We're separate.
Maybe with here. Oh, here we go.
Okay.
Here we go. I got it. Okay. I didn't want to go ahead of myself. Like I said, Lynda's are over on the left. It goes down to her father and her brothers. Of course, her father didn't take that test, but her brothers did, and they got his DNA. And it so happens that Jose Herculano Sena, her grandfather, had one of those SNPs, one of those DNA mutations, and her brothers currently have that. His father, Juan Sena, also had a SNP. So all of those came down to him. More than likely, there's more that we don't know about. As more men test, the more SNPs occur, and the more families can get put together. So the Senas know exactly where they come from. And so does, to the left, and it's kind of cut off, is the Mondragons. They also have a line up to Luis the First. Only instead of going through Luis the Second, they go through Pedro Martin Serrano. Pedro and Luis the First are brothers. And he has a perfect line that goes up to it. The ones on the right, they all go to Louis the First, but they don't have enough genealogy to really put them where they need to be. They need to work on their genealogy. Come on. Okay, here's my middle one, the one that we have an unknown person. I think you can see me down here, Tom J. Martinez. My SNP is this RFT237269. I got that from my grandfather, Jose Bautista Martinez. When he was born, he got this mutation in his genes and passed it down to my dad, me and my brothers. And then my brother passed it on to my nephew over here on the towards the right. When he took that test, it takes two people to figure out that SNP. I couldn't get it by myself. You have to have two people to match. When he tested, both of us got that RF237269. It takes two people to get that. So if you test and you have a totally different haplogroup and you find out that you have nobody matching you, you just kind of have to wait until somebody else tests and happens to get that haplogroup, and then all of a sudden you guys match and you create new SNPs that are closer in time. So far, I've only been able to go up to Jose Julian Martin in my genealogy. It's kind of stuck right there. Before the DNA, I was actually going through here, through the Pedro Martin Serrano and the Luis II, because there was a man named Julian Martin on those genealogies too. But I couldn't get enough information to prove that. I was told it was one of those two lines. But then when I took the YB700, I got this SNP, RF237269. It did not come from Louis the First. Louis the First did not get this. Somebody unknown got it. So that means I don't belong at all on that side. That proved everything, all those trees wrong. So those trees that I had there before are totally messed up. And DNA proved it. DNA does not lie. But unfortunately, family trees do sometimes. And that's because you don't get all the information. The priest didn't put down the name correctly, the dates correctly, things like that. There's always errors. And also, sometimes the son is really not the son of the husband, of the woman's husband. It's totally somebody else. That happens a lot. Okay, over on the left is the Domingo side. Domingo has a SNP that's called FT184544. Domingo has this SNP that he got it from his father, but it was not Louis the First, because everybody on the Louis the First side and on my side do not have that SNP. So everybody that you see here on the left side of that chart have this particular SNP. Plus more as people test, they get further down. Like for instance, I know John Valdez, he's clear over on the left-hand side here at the very bottom. He took a couple of tests. His SNP is FT187574, which is the same thing as Domingo. And then later on, as people tested, he got another SNP called, no, that is it right there. That is from his grandfather. So your grandfather had that SNP. His last name is Valdez, but it's really Martin Serrano, just like Lynda's. It was Sena, but it's really Martin Serrano. He's trying to figure out where that connection is now. And he's working at it pretty hard. Ron Sandoval also is having that situation. And Ron is over here on the right, where you see Sandoval. And his tree only has this 1, 2, 3, 4 people, 4 men that he has been able to go back to, an unknown person. He's trying to figure out where the Martinez connection is. Somebody jumped the fence over here. So this is what's going on with this tree. Now, the other chart that you see over there, it's essentially the same thing, but in a slightly different version. It's the same people, but they're all on the right, and all your ancestors are towards the left. And they're all connected with all these various lines. Okay? So this is the top part of that. Or, this is most of it except blown up. And these are the different haplogroups that I've broken up that you saw in the earlier chart. The 3 different sections. At the top is my section. I'm located right here. And I go back to this Y64368, the unknown man. The middle section is Lynda Martin Serrano's section. She is down in here somewhere. Yeah, the Senas are up here. Brother Sena and Brother Sena. And they go on up to Luis the First. And of course, he goes on up to Hernan Martin. Over here is Ron Sandoval's section. All and John Valdez. They all go up to Domingo. And of course, Domingo goes up to Hernan. So right now, there's 3 sections that we know about in our DNA. Here's the upper section in a little bit closer view with all the various names. You can see my grandfather right here, Juan Bautista Martinez, with his SNP. Here's Jose Damien Mondragon. All these Mondragons took that test. And here's Juan B. Sena and Jose Herculano Sena, 2 SNPs in the Sena family. All these people go up to Luis the First. Got that? It's pretty easy once you realize what's going on. And down here are all the Domingos going to the Domingos down here, lower left. No, I'm sorry, this is the one. Now it's 2025. That was 2020, 4 years ago. So in 2025, we have 49 people tested. 7 of them are new since last year. We have 6 new SNPs with 25 total SNPs coming from Hernan Martin Serrano. Remember I told you Hernan was PH3335? It's been replaced with that BY181174. You're probably wondering, how can that be? How can you replace one SNP with another? I know John is. He's looking at me like, what's going on here? Turns out also that Domingo, he does have that SNP 184544, but it really comes from his father or maybe his grandfather. That's what the DNA is telling us now. This is the current Big Y 700 time tree, kind of like that chart over that I was showing you earlier, but it's current for now. Hernan Martin Serrano is right here, highlighted in yellow, with the new SNP, BY181174. The one he had before is way over here on the left, PH3335. But look at the date, 892 BC. No, I'm sorry, after Christ, 892. Hernan's is 1573. That's about when he was born. All that happened was these 2 were switched. He stayed where he was, but that SNP went back in time. It really wasn't born here, it was born here by some person right here in 892 or thereabouts. You see this dashed lines over to the left and to the right, those are approximately the approximate time. The A92 is not exact. It's an approximation. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. Now, Luis the first down here, that hasn't changed. It's still the same. But Domingo has, and he's down below that where we can't see. This all comes from the upper left chart right up here. That's all you're seeing. We're not seeing this bottom part. But that's a big change right here. One of the reasons it changed because of this guy by the name of Beatty. He has PH 3335, but he does not have Hernan's SNPs or any of our SNPs. He comes from way back here, and it's totally different line. Yeah.
Can I ask a question now?
Sure.
Do you want me
No,
to
go
wait
ahead.
till the end? What's his name? The top guy?
Beatty.
Would that mean he's got Celtic background?
More than likely, yeah. He comes from Spain too, or the East European. But I've talked to him. He does have a Spanish family, but his line doesn't show that it being a Hernan Martin. It could be something totally different because the R's are all over the place. It's not just a Martin Serranos. But that split it up, and he currently matched with other people, and they have that PH 3335. That all of a sudden has become defined. Before it wasn't defined. That's why those SNPs changed. And I'll talk about that a little bit more. This was the older tree that we had before all these ones that you see now. And this was kind of hard to understand. The very top is the PHR 3335. And there's all kinds of other ones in here in this, what they call a box. This is what they call the big block tree. I am down here at the bottom. Think of these as branches coming off the big blue block. These are all branches at the bottom. There's Hernan Martin Serrano in 2024, not currently, 2024, what's in these charts. There's Luis Martin Serrano's branch. There's my unknown branch. There's Domingo's branch, okay? That's how that big block tree works. I really don't like it because it's hard to understand. I like this other way better. But I needed to show you this because I wanted to explain more why those SNPs switched. It had to do with what's called a big box of equivalents. As of January 2025, that PH3335 was born in 890 current era. And Martin Serrano has this new SNP born around 1550, plus or minus 100 years. So that PH moved up to another block, a long time ago, and it's by itself. Before that, PH 3355 was with this bigger block. And this is called a box of equivalents. The reason they call it that is because all these SNPs that you see in here, the DNA experts really don't know what to do with them. There may be only one person that matches to that. There may be some other issues going on with the DNA. So they haven't assigned them to anybody yet. Eventually, over time, as more and more men test, it'll go down to more branches. And which is what happened. When Beatty and his matches tested, all of a sudden, that PH3335 became defined. And it wasn't no longer in that block. They had to move it all the way back. See what I mean? It's really kind of confusing. I know it when you guys leave, it's all going to go zip. It was for me. I've been at this for 9 years now. So I go over it and over it and over it, and that's why I understand it. It's like playing a musical instrument. You got to practice every day.
If you have a male that does their DNA, yet you don't have, didn't do the Y, does it come up with the same?
No, you have to do a Y.
You have to do it.
Yeah, I didn't explain that. If you take let's say a DNA test from Ancestry,
Yes.
they do not include Y. Nor does anybody else. Only the family tree DNA has the Y test.
Okay.
They also have what's called a family finder, which is kind of like the Ancestry test that anybody can take. There's also an mtDNA that the women can take. It shows the mother's line, mother to daughter to mother to grandmother on all the way back thousands of years. So there's really two tests, but this is just for the men. Lynda.
I'm glad you mentioned that about the mtDNA. I want to mention this to my cousins. So my mtDNA haplogroup is C1b11. So that means my Reyes cousins, they carry the same one because their mother was my mother's sister. So, like Tom said,
Now she said her haplogroup started with a C. Anybody that has the haplogroup of A, B, C, D, I think X, on the maternal side are all come from Native American. Mine comes from A. I took my maternal test and it's an A. Those are all haplogroups, just like the men's side. And they're just different branches. So if you take that maternal test, mtDNA, and it comes up with A, B, C, D, or X, it's all Native American. Okay, here's the Domingos side. One of the reasons I have this is Domingo's father. And it's because this particular SNP was around 1581. Well, Domingo was born in 1620 something. I forget the exact date right now. So that can't be him. Although it might be plus or minus 50 years or so. But still, I really don't think that's him. I think it may be his father or even his grandfather. Of course, that same SNP is carried down to Domingo and to everybody else. But what this SNP is telling me is that it's moving backwards in time a little bit, just like the PH33 did, really went back. But it's being defined a little bit better. This is what tells you, the professionals how to figure out exactly what time it is. It's called a probability plot. The mean plot is 1573 at the very top of that peak. The dashed line at the bottom, it's a 95% chance that it could be between 1460 and 1665. So it could be anywhere between there. But more than likely it's 1573. But it could be way off too. But it's just a probability plot. This you really don't have to remember. It's just remember that it's assumption. They're really trying to figure out the timing. Over time, they'll figure it out. So this is what I think may be happening to this new SNP that may be Domingo's grandfather. It could be that, I remember that PH33 changed to 181174 for Hernan. And this is Lynda's line. It could be Hernan, the first brother, that has created this SNP. It could be his son, an unknown son that we don't know about. It wasn't Hernan II because he would have had it. Because there's people that they may have had that we know nothing about.
So, Tom?
Yeah.
So, Hernan II is the one that came with Oñate?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, Hernan I came from Spain. Hernan II came with Oñate to New Mexico.
And so Domingo's, you're saying father or grandfather would be related to Hernan II?
We don't know. He also could be the son of Hernan II. It's during that time period, see? And if you really want to go out on a limb, put him on the other side, and he could be the father of Hernan III. and he really may not be a son of Hernan II. That's just going out on the limb. You know, there's all kinds of possibilities, but the only way we're going to know is to get more tests to refine everything. Yeah.
Have any descendants of Juan tested?
No, we don't have any so far. Nobody on Hernan III's Juan and Jose. We don't have any trees at all that have tested. Only on Luis the First side and the unknown side and Domingo. Yes.
Do we know factually, Lynda, that Hernan the Third had those two sons? What did
Well,
you say?
according to the documents, Hernan II, those were his two sons. Hernan III, he comes from Doña Inés, who was the Tono Indian. They just don't know who Luis's mother is. They think it could be Doña Inés, but there's no documents to prove that.
There-
So there
But
are
the
documents to
DNA
prove.
is showing that he comes from Luis the First.
The DNA is showing it. There are no documents like baptismals or marriages, just other documents that kind of mention their birth, that they were born in such and such a time, and who their father was. That's all there is.
Yes.
And the fact that they all lived together. Okay?
What did you just say?
So that's why they can be broken up, and we're doing it through DNA.
I misunderstood what John said. What did you say about Hernan?
Tom, can you go back to the previous slide? I don't want to take up too much time. But Hernan, we're assuming that Hernan the Third is the father of Juan and Jose, or do we know that?
Juan and Jose.
Yes.
Hernan the Third
Domingo
is-
and Juan and Jose. There are documents that say Hernan the Third's son is Juan and Jose. And that was where the confusion was. Remember, Tom?
Yeah.
Juan and his wife, and I'm sorry, I don't have that memorized. Juan and his wife, they had a son named Hernando. And Hernando married Josefa Gonzalez. Okay. And then they had a daughter named Tomasa. Because I thought at one time Tomasa was my relative. And she is, but not a direct, like she's not my direct ancestor.
So I'm trying to put a timeline together.
And
in
I
my
don't
head.
have the dates in my head. Maybe
So Juan, are we sure that he was born in 1643?
without looking at a document, I can't say
Okay,
that.
yeah, Tom, let's go ahead.
Okay, if anybody wants to take a test, it's not cheap. The Y37 that I first took in 2016 was $119, and it's still $119. They really haven't gone up. They've actually gone down in price, little by little. If you want to take a test, take that first. Don't go straight to the big Y700, because you may take that big Y700 and you're the only one there. Then you really have to wait a long time. Take that Y37; it'll give you any matches that match you, and then you know whether to go on ahead or not. So it's a good place to start, and it'll give you enough information to know whether you need to go up higher. And the difference in the price that you paid, $119, goes into whatever you pay for the higher brand ones. They take off $119 from $449. So upgrading to the big Y will take you from thousands of years old haplogroups to within genealogical time haplogroups. You can find out who these people are if you have good enough family trees. That's the thing. You got to put trees and DNA together. DNA by itself doesn't work. Family trees by themselves don't work, because they may be lying.
Can you emphasize when you say the family tree that there needs to be sources,
documentation.
Yeah, that's why. Even the documentations may be lying, unfortunately. But yeah, whenever genealogy is made, you really have to have a source. If you say your father is your father, you got to prove it. Where's his birth certificate? Where was he born? Show your birth certificate that shows you he's your father, and so forth. On down the line, you got to show important information, like documents, like birth certificates and marriages are the most important. And of course, newspaper articles, that kind of thing, they're less important, but they contribute to it.
I don't want to take up your time either, Tom. So if you tell us you have enough time. I just want to interject there because it is very important. My mother was born out of wedlock. Okay, so my mother was raised by her grandparents, and it happens a lot. It happened a lot in New Mexico. Parents died, or the mother was raped, or whatever. A woman was raped. So my mother's real biological father was Toribio Lobato. So my mother is a Madrid to her mother and a Lobato to her father. So just remember that things happen. We don't always know the whys or what's, and maybe we don't want to know.
Yeah. So if you know somebody that wants to take a test, or if you're a man that wants to take a test, and if you don't like skeletons in your closet, don't take this test. But if you're curious and you really want to know, go ahead and do it. Now, right now, you can get it a lot cheaper right now. Boy, this thing is kind of making it crazy. There's a savings of $40 on the Y37 right now, but between now and the March 31st. All you need is this promotion codes that are over here on the right. If you can't get them, email me. My email is tomjmartinez@gmail.com. I can give you these codes. For the big Y, it's $70 off. And that's till March the 31st. Or if you want to wait till later on, they're always having sales. St. Patrick's Day, I think they're having a sale. Father's Day, Mother's Day, Christmas, they're always having sales. Now, another thing you want to do is when you have a family tree together, send it to the New Mexico Genealogical Society's DNA project. They are putting all these things together with the DNA to let you know what branch you belong to and who you belong to. They are the ones that told me I am the RM269 and you belong to the Hernan Martin Serrano branch without me even doing any DNA. So I had to try and figure out how I got there. And that's what I've been doing. This is another way of looking at it. At the very top, Hernan the First with his snip. There's Luis the First with his snip. Come on. There's me down here, or my grandfather, Jose Bautista, with his snip. And the unknown person that I'm trying to figure out who it is, going up to Martin Serrano. And it went too far, too quick. But over on the left was the Domingo side, and Lynda's in the middle. So really all I was trying to show you on this is that to let you know what the difference between haplogroups and SNPs, they're exactly the same thing because it's going to come up if you take this test. Come on, here you go. In our case, it starts with an R. Others may start with an I or a J. Totally different branch. Mine was 269. It is 6,500 years old. My current one is only 142 years old from my grandfather. Okay? Now, I can't get any more SNPs unless I have another grandson or they have children. It's possible that they have SNPs in their DNA that they will pass on. That's the only way it's going to be passed on, through the male. And I don't have any male children. My brother only has one male child. He's the one that I had tested to get my grandfather's SNP. So he just got married, so I'm hoping he has a son. Otherwise, my Martinez line is going to die with right here. That's my grandfather, by the way. He was born in San Francisco in the La Valle. And so was my dad, so was I, all my sons, and going back 3 generations. My third great-grandfather, Jose Gregorio Martin, was one of the first people to settle that area. Before, all there was Indians. He left. I got a feeling the Indians kicked him out, went back to Arroyo Hondo. His children ended up coming back, though. So I'll end it with this. If you have any questions. Yes?
Did you find out about
Francisco to one of those SNPs?
Francisco, which Francisco?
Gregorio Francisco?
Oh, no. He, I haven't gotten a snip further back then. I only have my grandfather's and the unknown person back in the 1700s. If I get more people to test and that match to me, because there's got to be a bunch of people there, a bunch of men coming off of that line, then we'll get some more SNPs and possibly get some connections and figure all this out. So SNPs, because that's when my grandfather was born in 1883 and I was born in 1947, 146 years ago. Simple math. Now, SNPs occur approximately every 75 to 100 years. That's the average. They could occur the very next generation. It happened in the Sena family. It could occur maybe every 3 or 4 generations, but the average is 75 to 100 years that it occurs. Any more questions? Yes.
If you don't mind, I just would like to say something. If you don't mind about the lighting. So just remember, if you're a male, you want to take the Y DNA test. That's really important. I can't even emphasize it enough. I'll just say it quite a bit of times. But if you're the female and you want to trace your mother, you want to do the MT test. Yeah, I was going to say that. And so if you want to say, like me, I'm a C1B11, that means my cousins, Kathy and Debbie, are C1B11s because their mother is my mother's sister. Okay? And then I forgot what you just said. Sorry.
Males carry the X
Oh,
and
yes.
Y chromosome.
Yes, thank you. So also a male can take the Y test and the mtDNA test. Don't ask me why. I'm not a scientist.
Okay, let me tell the people on YouTube and Facebook what you said. mtDNA can be taken by both the male and the female because the mother sends down that mtDNA to both the male and the female. But the female is the only one that can send it down to their children. The male cannot. Okay, got it? That's why you can test for your mother's grandmother on back. Now, the Y DNA, it's only passed down from father to son. It doesn't go to the daughter.
Since we're both doing Martin Serrano, so I checked the family tree on my brother before, I did the presentation. And my brother Victor is 61% Spanish and like 31% native. And I'm 42 and 42. So what does that tell you, right? I carry a lot of the native blood. I don't know why it happened.
The reason is, what Lynda said is that the ancestry test, Victor carries 31% Native American. Lynda carries 43, I think. 42. The reason there's a difference is because in the ancestry test, it's called an autosomal test. When the genes are divided up between your mother and father and they go to the children, you don't get the same amount of genes. It's not like the Y DNA where it's total and those SNPs go complete to the son. mtDNA goes complete to the children. Autosomal does not. It's divided. You only get a few genes from the father, a few genes from the mother, a few genes from the grandfather, a few genes from the great-grandmother on back, about 5 generations. So it's a mixture. That's why we don't all look alike. Thank God.
I thought we did all this.
Now, when twins are born, they essentially get the same genes as their parents.
Identical.
But identical twins. But there's still the difference, believe it or not. There's a little bit of difference there. But anyway, I think that's all I have time for. And thank you very much for listening. I'll talk to you guys afterwards, okay? Thanks.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah. Go ahead.
There was a guy that spoke to our society about DNA. Was that Martinez?
Yeah.
When he spoke, he said that if you had Maria de la Cruz on your ancestry chart, her DNA goes back 5,000 years to some cave they found back in France or somewhere.
Yeah.
So did they find that information out through snippets?
Yeah, they are. They're snakes also, and they are found archaeologically. They dig up their bones and whatever they can find and get the DNA. And if it matches with what we currently have, then that's where we came from. It's pretty simple. Any more questions? Okay, well, thank you very much.